So you want to book a cruise, you want to head out into the ocean at the time of year that the biggest storms on Earth are happening. Well, I've got a few ideas and tips, so stay tuned. Hi, I'm Jerry and I am one half of the Cruising Canucks, and you might be wondering why on earth is a Canadian giving you advice on hurricanes? We don't see a lot of hurricanes, especially up in the Great Lakes part of Canada. In fact, we never see hurricanes in that part of North America, but I do have some expertise on this, and watch this clip and see if you can guess how. I have found a weather buoy made in Canada too. Let's take a look at this. Weather is my life. I can't escape it. Even at Amber Cove. Awesome. That's awesome. So if you haven't guessed yet, I am a emergency management meteorologist, meaning that I forecast the weather for those type of situations where disasters are happening, and forecast accuracy is very important as people make decisions and try to save lives. So you've got to get it right most of the time. So that's what my bread and butter is. When I'm not cruising the high seas, I'm at work trying to forecast the weather. So hurricanes and cruise ships kind of go together to me just kind of perfect. So today what I want to do is I want to cover a few tips and ideas and strategies that we've used in trying to book cruises during hurricane season. So first, let's discuss when hurricane season is. Hurricane season runs from June 1st until October 31st. That's at least the official definition, but they can happen before June and they often happen after October. And that's been the case the last several years where we've had some pretty active hurricane seasons. And so booking a cruise somewhere in the warm seasons for North America, and for this video's purpose, I'm going to talk mostly entirely about North America hurricane season in the Atlantic, not the Pacific side or South Pacific or Asia. But specifically those storms that threaten the Gulf of Mexico, the east coast of the United States, where there are a lot of cruise ports and a lot of people trying to often travel. Okay, since I mentioned when hurricane season is, let's talk a little bit about how hurricane season affects the pricing for cruises. Might not surprise you, cruise lines also know when hurricane season is, and they also know when there's a little bit of hesitancy from potential cruisers to book, and that would be typically late August. And hurricane season isn't created equally. They usually a few weak storms early in the year, kind of late spring, early summer, a few that are kind of turned into more like nor'easters later in the season, but middle of August through to middle of September is kind of the height of hurricane season when you get the really big, strong storms that can drastically impact cruise itineraries. And it's at that time that cruise lines have a discount usually for cruises. So some of the cheapest cruises you can find in the summer are typically in that last couple weeks of August, right when we head into the heart of hurricane season. And we've cruised several times at that time of year and done so successfully. We'd had at least one itinerary that was kind of changed a little bit, but that's the peak hurricane season. That's where you're gonna get your best prices. So you wanna go a little earlier in the summer when there's less risk of a hurricane, you're gonna pay a little bit more. So this video might be especially for you if you're looking to save a dime in the summer and kind of wanna risk going out in hurricane season and seeing what that looks like. There's two main ways that hurricanes can impact your cruise, and one will be the itinerary itself, where the ship's going, and the other way will be the cruise port that you're trying to either leave from or get back to. So let's cover both those situations. Now the good news is when it comes to itineraries for cruises and the impacts from hurricanes is that your ship will not head into a hurricane. I know a lot of people have this fear of what will we do if a hurricane comes during our cruise. Your cruise ship will simply avoid the hurricane, it'll steer around it, and you will only see often just a few waves, kind of some stormy, cloudy weather, maybe at worst, but you're not going to be heading straight into the eye of a hurricane, and it'll be more about having your itinerary adjusted than anything else. So when we think of that, then consider being flexible on your itinerary. Just realize that if you go during hurricane season, there's a pretty good chance that you will have your itinerary changed if there is a hurricane that is active and moving into the area that your ship intends to travel. Now, the other way that a hurricane can impact your cruise is trying to leave a port if the hurricane's coming in, or trying to get back if the hurricane is impacting that same area. So it is possible that your cruise could be delayed a couple days. It might even be shortened. A 5-day might turn into a 3, or a 7 might turn into a 6 or a 5 if the ship can't get in and out of port to disembark and embark new passengers. So that's always a risk during hurricane season. And also there's a chance your cruise could be extended. Your cruise ship might be out at sea, a hurricane may move into the port that you're supposed to return to, and it has to hold back and wait a couple days until it's safe to get back into port. So in that situation, you may have a 7-day turn into a 9-day. So those are the two big things to watch for, is a change to your itinerary and the change in when the ship might come and go if there's a hurricane impacting the port of arrival and departure. So let's talk a little bit more about the itinerary and the strategies around that. And what Jill and I have come up with is that we typically do not care where the ship is traveling to if we're booking a hurricane season cruise. We might want to get to a certain number of these ports, but we're not booking the cruise saying we're just dying to get this specific location, and if it doesn't happen, we're going to be disappointed. We're happy to be on a cruise ship. We often choose a cruise in the summer months where there could be a hurricane based on the ship and how much we'll enjoy life on the ship than we do actually where the ship is going. For example, you don't want to be booking a dream vacation and excursion on St. Kitts and find out a hurricane's hitting the outer islands and you're getting diverted to Cozumel. So if that's the situation you're in, then I'd advise you not to travel during hurricane season if you're looking for a specific destination, because the odds are if a hurricane's out there, there could be some diversions and you might miss that port that you're looking forward to. So there's tip number one. Don't place a lot of weight on enjoying your cruise based on where it is supposed to go, because it might not get there. So next we'll talk about the cruise ports and some strategies there. We definitely come in at least the day before. If we're booking during August and our cruise is leaving Fort Lauderdale, we're there definitely the day before, maybe even 2 days before. We don't want to run into a situation where the airports are, trying to evacuate people or changing flights because of a hurricane, that we want to get in there if it's safe to do so. We also find that cruise ports are not all equal when it comes to the risk of a hurricane having an impact. Obviously, those ports on the south part of Florida, specifically the Atlantic coast of Fort Lauderdale, Miami, maybe Orlando a little bit, they're more likely to be impacted by a hurricane impacting cruises or cruise ships coming and going, more so than, say, even Tampa or, say, ports that are farther north, whether it's Charleston, Baltimore, New Jersey, New York, Boston. They could be impacted by a hurricane, but they're less likely to be impacted, as the hurricanes typically move in over the Bahamas and they kind of curve off into the Atlantic and kind of miss those northern ports. Like I said, it's happened many times that it does impact those northern ports, but it's less often, less likely than it is those southern destinations. So just if you're looking to reduce your risk of a hurricane impacting your cruise, maybe choose a port that's not right on the southern tip of Florida that typically has the biggest chance. And also the Gulf Coast is kind of an interesting situation. We've booked several times out of New Orleans and Galveston, knowing that if there's a hurricane anywhere in the Gulf, it could really impact our itinerary. We may not be able to get out of port. The ship may be delayed and held back in the Caribbean because it can't get through the Gulf because there's a large hurricane in place. So we're very cognizant about booking in New Orleans and Galveston, simply because if there is a Gulf hurricane, or even a couple in a row like we've seen the last couple of years, then that can really impact itineraries in the Gulf of Mexico. And we typically try to avoid that area, especially mid-August. But in saying that, we've done it at least twice, if not 3 times in August, and we've always had some success. And also when it comes to planning the actual dates of getting in and out of your cruise, you need to have a lot of flexibility. As I mentioned earlier, your cruise could be shortened, it could be lengthened. So those flights that you have booked might not work out. Those hotels that you had planned to stay in, you might need an extra night. You might be coming in late to catch an aircraft and have to change a flight. And so you need to be flexible on those dates. If you are planning a cruise exactly in a certain time frame and you have to be back to work on a certain day, or you can't leave until a certain day, then that is probably going to run into problems. So just keep in mind that your dates need to be a little more flexible during hurricane season than they are, say, during a winter cruise. So another thing to keep in mind is that if you are traveling to a cruise port and your ship doesn't arrive, but the hurricane does, and you do end up in an emergency situation, you may be asked to evacuate. You may be asked to go to a shelter. There could be a situation where you are having to do something totally unlike the dream vacation you planned, and sheltering in place and having to wait out a storm. So just keep in mind that you may be given direction to do certain things during an emergency, and so be very careful. If you end up coming and going out of a cruise port and the hurricane is directly impacting that port, just be mindful that you may have to pay attention to the local officials, the local guidance, and do whatever it is to keep you safe. Even if your ship is avoiding a hurricane, hurricanes are very large storms. And you could be in a situation where we're going to see a storm several hundred miles away, almost 1,000 miles away, and you may have the influences from that storm still affecting your ship. Those slow rolling, long waves may come in and the ship will be tilting back and forth. So even if you miss the hurricane, odds are you might have a little bit of weather, and that kind of tunes me into thinking about seasickness. It also may impact where you want to choose your room on the ship. You know, you might not want to be at the ends, maybe center, low in the ship. That way, if there is some rocking of the boat from a hurricane that's well away from the ship, that you may not feel the motion as much if you're well positioned in the ship. So maybe it's another tip there is to kind of book the right room if you are looking to travel during hurricane season, to kind of minimize that motion if you are susceptible to seasickness. Now this next one is likely one that you're going to say, Jerry, you're a meteorologist, you know how to do this. But I really ask you to be situationally aware of what's happening in the world of hurricanes before you go on your cruise, just to give you a heads up of what could be coming your way. You can tune into the National Hurricane Center. They have a website, and they have out to 5 days, they tell you where there's a risk of storms. Now, hurricanes are very tough to predict exactly when they're going to happen, where they're going to move to, but the National Hurricane Center does a great job of providing real-time information on the latest forecasts, where they're located. Even the cruise lines themselves are using information from the National Hurricane Center to decide where the cruise ships to go. So start paying attention to that, and just the general weather forecasts. And there may be, you may have your favorite website that has weather models and gives you an idea of what's coming. But try to be aware. You don't want to be getting on a plane and traveling to an airport where they're actually trying to evacuate people because of a really strong hurricane or a risk, or if an airport's being shut down. So you want to be aware of this before you're going, so that you know you're not going into danger, and also so that you might be able to build some contingency plans. So you know if a hurricane's coming, you might be looking at needing to have a hotel an extra night or two, for example, if the ship's going to be delayed. And stay on top of the latest news, and just stay informed. It's always the best bet, so you know what the situation is before you even get into it. So another really successful tool you can use when it comes to hurricane season cruising is insurance, travel insurance. I'm not talking medical insurance, because we know the boat's going to be safe. It's not going to be impacted by the storm all that much. But what you need is your trip cancellation, your trip interruption insurance. A lot of times cruise lines can cover some of the inconveniences. They may give onboard credits, that type of thing. They may give you credits for a future cruise. But sometimes you're going to have to deal with extra expenses when it comes to hotels and possibly even flights if the cruise line can't help with that. So if you have your trip insurance, it can go a long ways in making this uncertainty kind of go away and know that you're covered no matter what happens. Another good idea is to keep loved ones informed. So if you have someone at home that is watching a pet for a couple days while you're away, or they are checking on your house, or they are kind of your emergency contact, try to be contactable in some way. I know a lot of you want to go away on a cruise and just unplug, and no phones, no internet, just let me lay in the lounger and just not even worry about anything back at home. You kind of want to be contactable during hurricane season. Your itinerary could change. You might be coming back late. The person that was going to pick you up at the hotel or the airport may have to all of a sudden adjust what dates they're going to be picking you up. Your pet may need to be checked on or cared for a little bit longer. And the big one is family, maybe watching the news and hearing all these stories about hurricanes in a certain area, and they're thinking that you're out there in a cruise ship doing battle with a hurricane. If you can get a hold of those people and say, we're safe, we've been diverted, that there's no risk, then that goes a long ways for peace of mind for the people at home, and also for you to know that loved ones are aware and know what's going on with you. especially on this one. Let me know down below, because this is my passion. Weather and cruising, when it comes together in one, this is what I love to do. So any questions about hurricanes or ships or any experiences you've had, I'd love to know about it as well. So throw those in the comments below. Jill and I have always approached August cruising in the Caribbean as being, we're going on a cruise, we've picked the ship that we like, and it's all about just enjoying the ship life. We don't really care where the ship ends up. It could go to a couple different islands we don't expect, but we make the most of it. We have a good time, and we're still on a cruise ship. So keep that in mind during hurricane season cruising, and you'll be set for sure, and you're always going to be safe. I don't want to scare anybody that cruising isn't safe during hurricane season. It definitely is. Cruise lines avoid the big storms, but they just have a little bit of difficulty sometimes planning the way things are going to shape up depending on which way the storm turns. So you just kind of have to keep that in mind and kind of just roll with it. So thanks everybody for watching. Stay safe out there, especially if you're going cruising during hurricane season, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.